Hi everyone, my name is Yula and I am an artist and filmmaker in Toronto. I am also an Israeli citizen. I left Israel 23 years ago and I've been living in Canada ever since. Here's my Israeli passport. Here's my Israeli ID and army exemption card. I didn't serve in the army. Last week, I submitted an application to renounce my Israeli citizenship in the consulate here in Toronto. It wasn't a decision I made lightly. I've been thinking about it for a long time. In fact, from the moment I learned about the real history of the place where I grew up, the history that wasn't taught to us in schools or even talked about while I was living there, until last week at the consulate, it's been a really long process that took 2 decades. Yes, I did it in response to Israel's horrific assault on Gaza. But since this isn't the first time that Israel is bombing Gaza, why now? Why this moment? Because the amount of casualties has reached catastrophic proportions, and even though we're in a temporary ceasefire or pause or whatever you want to call it right now, it seems like it's not going to end anytime soon. And even Israeli officials are saying that after the pause, they intend to keep bombing for 2 more months at least. Whether Israel realizes it or not, all this death harms its own people as well. During my childhood in Israel, I lived through 2 major wars. One of them was the first Gulf War, 2 intifadas, Palestinian uprisings, 26 suicide bombings, one of which I witnessed myself. And my town that was located on the Lebanese border was bombed every other day throughout my entire childhood. And even though the rockets used were either homemade or old and not very precise, even I know 2 people who died by rocket fire in my hometown. I spent so much of my childhood going in and out of bomb shelters, wondering whether or not I should go to a bomb shelter, skipping class and school days because the schools were closed due to rocket fire. How many times I sat with my friend as a teen watching as flares fell down around the forest. I learned how to put a gas mask on myself and my siblings when I was 10 and they were 7 and 6. Just in case my parents weren't home. I participated in dozens of drills. I learned to differentiate between outgoing and incoming rocket fire, just so I can stay in bed a few more minutes. And throughout all of that, the messaging on the news and in newspapers and everywhere around us was that this is normal. This is because we're Jews and everyone around us wants to annihilate us. It feels like Israel is playing a game, even right now, the situation right now, using words like winning, trying to one-up the other side as much as possible, even though the context is thousands of dead civilians. Israeli soldiers make mocking TikTok videos on top of the ruins of Palestinian homes in Gaza. Why am I doing this now? Because more than ever, it's clear to me now that in Israel, peace is not the goal. And I don't know if it ever was. And when I think back on my childhood and all the times we spent running in and out of the bomb shelter, all the times my parents were worried about us, all the time I spent worrying while putting on a brave face like we were encouraged to, I feel like it's the kind of state that doesn't care about its own people. And I'm not even talking about all the torture, abuse, and humiliation inflicted upon Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza, or Palestinians with Israeli citizenship that Israel loves to use as some sort of proof that it's not an apartheid state. I'm talking about the way Israel treats its own people. You would think that living in a dangerous situation like we did, right on the border, would make us the focus of our state's resources and efforts to create peace in the region. But no, Israel is an entity that is built on hierarchies, where a person's value and humanity are tied directly to their identity. And because of that, unwanted populations, so poor people, brown people, immigrants from countries that are not wealthy, are often placed in forgotten places, places along the borders where the government doesn't have to concern itself with them as much. In this kind of society where people are categorized and placed within a hierarchy like that, abuse and bullying are how people tap into their own sense of superiority and entitlement and assert themselves. While living there, I was on the receiving end of this dynamic more times than I'd like to remember. In Israel, repressed populations, so the people that I grew up with, my neighbors, they're the ones that have the nobility of sacrifice dangled in front of them like a carrot. The illusion that one day you can join them. This mostly expresses itself in how eager my neighbors, the kids that I grew up with, were to serve in the army because they thought that finally they would be accepted into society. And after a lifetime of discrimination at the hands of the Israeli state, what ends up happening is kids from poor towns get the worst jobs that are available within the army. And not only that, most of those kids, specifically these with parents from Iraq, Yemen, Morocco, whose parents speak Arabic, these kids get sent to become border guards. And they're the ones who engage with the Palestinian population. When I refused to serve in the army at age 18, it wasn't because of any sort of political awareness. I was living in a small town and I had no idea what I was doing. It was because I recognized the violent, macho energy that I remembered from the bullies of my childhood. I recognized it in this new system that I was expected to serve, and I felt my entire being resist it. When I was 26, I accidentally learned about the Nakba while looking for something online. When I was 36 and I went back there for the first time when my grandmother died, I traveled through the West Bank with my Canadian passport. I went through the checkpoints. I saw the soldiers and how they treat people depending on where they're from. I saw the double sets of roads, one for Jewish Israelis and one for Palestinians. I saw the 8-meter concrete wall cutting into towns, separating communities, separating family members. And throughout all of that, the people I met were nothing but kind to me. And when I crossed the border back to Israel and I watched the news, they were talking about the same people who were feeding me and helping me find my way as irrational, heartless animals that want to kill me. I haven't considered myself an Israeli citizen or even Israeli for so long that I'm actually surprised that it took me this many years to get to this point, and I was a little bit embarrassed. But I think I know why it took me so long. Israel spends so much time and money inciting its own people against each other, family members, friends, neighbors. This decision is going to affect my life, my ability to visit the place where I grew up. It's going to affect my relationship with my family, my relationships with the people closest to me, not just there, but here in Canada. I spent the past few weeks crying over witnessing horrific, heartbreaking, fucked up death and pain, but also grieving over the possibility that I may lose my relationship with my family. And there are many of us in this position, and we don't even live there, but the poison of that incitement is affecting us as well. I don't want anything to do with it. I don't want to be part of it. I don't want to be connected to it. I want you to take the time to imagine what has to happen for you to reject a citizenship and a passport. Everything that led to this decision, the process that led to this decision, was filled with pain and anger and grief. But this decision is necessary. I'm done. I hope that it will send a message, and I hope that other people in my position will consider doing the same. When I came out of the consulate last week, a group of friends waited for me outside, and I read a statement that I wrote beforehand. I'm going to make the statement available. It explains my personal trajectory, how I ended up in Israel, and how the circumstances of my arrival dictated the conditions of my life there. For those of you who are considering and want to ask me questions about the process of renunciation, you can find me. Thank you for watching.